Hey y'all, time for part 3 of the Back to Success Challenge, where we talk about 7 things you can be doing right now during this semester to sort of turn things around for your favor if you want to finish the semester off strong. So let's get into topic number 3. Now, pop quiz. Did you know that there's an ideal place in the classroom that you should sit as a student, whether it's a lecture hall or a discussion section, so that way you can maximize your connection with the instructor? Did you know? Don't worry, I'll tell you. Now, y'all, the place that you want to sit in the classroom is called the learning T. Rather than trying to describe it to you, let me just show you a quick diagram that I made. Okay, y'all, so the learning T is essentially the frontmost, centermost seats in the classroom. So if you're in a big lecture hall with like one big aisle throughway essentially going down the middle where students usually walk down the steps to enter the main room or whatever that might be, you want to aim for those seats that are in green on this diagram. So again, the frontmost seats and the centermost seats. And I'll explain why in a moment, but essentially this space allows you the opportunity for one to be within a line of sight for the instructor, but also can help you a bit strategically when it comes to studying and paying attention in class. Okay, here's like an adapted version of that same diagram, right? So I mentioned beforehand the frontmost, centermost. So this, again, the front row, maybe the front 2 rows, if you will, and then that stem of the T kind of represents that aisle. Now you want to sit in those seats because essentially every single box that is green or within that kind of cone, you see those like yellow lines, that represents the instructor's field of view. Field of vision if they're standing in front of the room, right? So they can see everything that's in green as well as all of those seats that are within that yellow sort of cone triangle, that space. And the reason why this is important is because one, if you're in that line of sight, if you, let's say, for example, the instructor asks if there are any questions, and maybe people are a little bit more nervous to ask questions in class, the instructor might then look, their line of sight and look at those students who are typically in their line of sight and look at your faces to gauge if you understand, or maybe if they need to go back over it again. So if they said, does everybody understand? If you sit here like staring at them, they might be like, all right, let me give another example, right? Sometimes that instructor can use your face to help guide or get a sense of whether or not y'all are understanding the information. So that's why it pays for you to sit in these specific seats. Something else to know about these specific seats, everything in green and maybe those little boxes that might fall within the field of view. Try to limit your side conversations because one, if you're distracted, those sorts of things, the instructor will see it. And also, it's going to be a lot harder to not only get distracted in the conversations with your friends, but also to fall asleep because the instructor is going to see you. You can't just kind of hide behind other people because you're within their line of sight. So again, if you find that you're falling asleep in class, you find like you're easily getting distracted, this might be a good place for you to move to within the classroom so that way you maximize your chances of being able to pay attention to class. Now make sure you are actually going to class because that can also benefit you. So the instructor can see you. So let's say, for example, you're struggling, you need additional support. The instructor is seeing your face regularly. Now, if you go into office hours asking questions, the instructor is looking at you during lecture to see you are really trying to engage with that material. And they can see that you're making a good faith effort. So let's say, for example, by the end of the semester, if you're in a situation where you are borderline on a grade, it could be that consistency of you showing up and sitting within their line of sight and them seeing that you're making forth the effort, that can be the difference between you getting like maybe a B- or a solid B. I'll give y'all a quick anecdote, and I may have told this on this platform before, but there was a time I was in a class and I sat in the front row and an instructor looked at me that first day and was like, oh, you bold to sit in that front row. And there were other people sitting around me too, but he looked directly at me and said, you're kind of bold sitting in this front row because every time some people have sat in the front row, they have fallen asleep. And I was sitting here like, oh, challenge accepted. Now, this was still my first year, or if not that, my second year, first semester, regardless, was the fall semester. And for the most part, I was doing really well. Like I wasn't getting super sleepy, anything of that sort. And then one day, y'all, I was struggling. My head was like, I was definitely looking like a bobblehead, right? And the instructor is lecturing and he's kind of like cackling, in his mind, smiling. You can see on his face as well, smiling because he sees me doing this and he's just waiting for me to fall asleep to be like, I told you after class, right? So what did I do? I was in a bridge program, and one of the things that they told us to do is if you're getting sleepy, find a way to stand up and go into the back of the room if you need to. So I was extra. I got up, went to the back of the room, was pacing. Like, you're not gonna catch me slipping, I'm gonna stay awake. And he was cracking up when he saw me do that. But essentially, we built a rapport, one, by me sitting in the front of the classroom, and two, he was able to say that to me. And so now it was like we had this unwritten conversation where it's like, I'm nodding off, he was waiting, like, is she gonna do it? Other people in the rows had done it, but I hadn't. And I made it through the whole semester without falling asleep in his class and then we also built a really strong rapport because of it. So again, it pays to sit in these seats to build. It's a quick way to start building rapport. Of course, there are other ways you can actually build rapport with instructors by going to office hours and those sorts of things. And if y'all want more tips about that, let me know. Maybe I can do another series about like how to make the most out of office hours, and that can be a conversation for another day. One last thing I want to make sure that I mention, because a lot of students don't know this, and I actually just did a presentation with my students a couple of days ago, and I just happened to mention this, and the way there was sheer panic on their faces. And so because they didn't know this, I want to make sure that you know this, okay? Instructors likely have a photo roster of every single student in the class. So yes, why it benefits you to sit in these front row centermost seats, right? That means that they can look to see, oh, Susie is sitting in these seats and seems to be this person is really engaged. Let me look up their name and their face. And oftentimes it might be whatever photo is on your student ID would be the photo that would show up on that roster. As an instructor, I've been able to download photo rosters and show students like quick glance. Like, I have a whole roster of your photos. Granted, it's a small enough class that I can get to know all of y'all by name. But yeah, if I got this, other instructors have this. So that's something to note. So that means if you are constantly coming into lecture late, you're constantly distracted, those sorts of things, and you're not coming into office hours, but it's kind of clear that you're not as engaged. Like, let's say, for example, y'all, we can tell when you're on social media, we can tell when you're looking at videos, we can tell when you're doing doing coursework for other classes. Instructors can tell no matter how much you try to mask it. We know, we can tell. I'm not going to tell y'all how we know, but just for those of y'all, if you know, we can tell very easily. But if you are one of those students who is just kind of just kikiing in the back or just distracted, the last thing you want is for the instructor to be like, who is this person? So let's say, for example, they might look you up and you're just distracted, whatever that might be. And then at the end of the semester, you come in asking, hey, is there any way you can bump my grade up a few points so that way I can get this because I need these points for my scholarship? And they can be like, they might have already looked at the roster to look and see what your name is, and then look at you in the face and be like, but you barely came to class. And when you did, you were sitting here distracted. You ain't put forth all the effort, but now you want me to sit here and do you a solid? Where they do that at? I kid, but I'm also very serious. All that to say, y'all, please hear me. It's really important for you to sit in these frontmost, centermost seats. Please don't try to hide. Make sure that if I'm encouraging you to step outside your comfort zone, what I like to call being squishy, stepping outside your comfort zone, and sit in these green seats or within that line of vision. And if you're in a regular classroom that has just regular, seats, classroom seats, or whatever that is, aim for the front. Now, I know people are more ingrained in their seating right now in the semester. And so if you see an empty seat towards the front, take that seat. And y'all remember, instructors, at the end of the day, public speaking is the number one fear that's out there, right? And so imagine an instructor being in front of a large group of students who are, maybe hanging on your word, or some people who might be really aggressive, trying to find ways to contradict, challenge, all that other stuff, challenge you while you're trying to lead these lectures of sometimes 200, maybe even 300 people. People can get a bit nervous. And so some people might be more inclined to focus on that front row and that middle section of the classroom. So by all means, if you want to make sure the instructor is seeing you and seeing you focused and engaged, like if you're in those seats, you need to be locked in. You hear me? Locked in. So that way they won't have any reason to say you weren't really doing what you needed to do. But sit in those seats so that way you can start kind of building a rapport without even talking to the instructor. And then to build it even more, you can go to office hours, talk to the instructor before or after class, whatever that might be. But yeah, if you're looking to turn things around and get yourself back to success, you need to sit in the learning tee. Hope this helps. I'll catch y'all in part 4. All right, bye.